Between the Board of Peace story, Greenland, and prior to that, Iran and Venezuela, a theory has been making the rounds that Donald Trump is out to distract attention away from another big story, the Epstein files. Trump's Justice Department was ordered to publish those documents more than a month ago. It has only made 1% of them public material that has been heavily redacted. Members of Congress have tapped into a second source, the Jeffrey Epstein estate, to try to get more information. As the Trump administration has been flooding the zone with news that mainstream outlets have been chasing, another unconventional team of investigators has been digging into the files to see what's there. They are led by Ellie Leonard, published on Substack, and doesn't even come to this from a journalistic background. She joins us now from New York City. Ms. Leonard, now you're a writer, you're an author. Your background is actually writing fiction. So what was it that pulled you so deeply into these Epstein files? How much of that was driven by what you were seeing or what you were not seeing in the mainstream media coverage in the U.S.?
Well, I've always been really passionate about politics and the things that are going on. And I was starting to hear the story of Epstein. I really hadn't followed it. I knew his name. And I started to hear these details about interactions between Epstein and Donald Trump. And I thought, I'm a practical person. I'd really like to see what evidence we actually have that we can hold in our hand that shows interactions between Trump and Epstein. And I just started detailing it. I just started adding it up and then putting it in chronological order. And at the end, I thought, I'll just put this on my Substack and just see what people think. And people went wild over it. And I thought, man, people must really want to know what's going on with this story. And so I went from there and I just started to do some really deep dives into the history of Epstein.
And what kind of methods did you rely on for that? How do you go about digging into this material? Walk us through how you do it and who is doing it with you now.
So in the beginning, I was looking at a lot of older articles. There's a lot of exposés on Epstein from before he was actually on trial. So I was reading some of these older Vanity Fair articles and reports that had been done in like the New York Times. And then we started to get these piles of Epstein files, and some of them came from the Epstein estate and some of them came from the DOJ. And I just thought, I've got a couple hours at night after my kids go to bed. I can just start scrolling. And so I started to read these files just one at a time, scrolling through. And I didn't use any AI. I just wanted to have my eyes on it. And as we got more information and I started to post more kind of detailed analysis of this stuff, I thought, I need more help. I can't do this all myself. This is thousands and thousands of pages. And my Substack had grown by that time. And I thought, maybe we could crowdsource this. Maybe we could all do this together. And so I put the word out. I pulled all the files and put them in a Dropbox just so they couldn't be redacted further. And I just started asking people and sending them the link. I said, let's look at this together. Let's put our heads together and see what we can find. And they have found a ton of stuff.
So they just go on the Substack, they go to the box, they click on it. So what kind of stuff are they coming out of this with?
Well, people are seeing records that I don't think we were meant to see necessarily, or they hoped we wouldn't see.
We're covering the new developments and the fallout from the big headline this morning involving President Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen.
We actually found this email that indicates that Michael Cohen was asking for something called a Rule 35, which means he was asking for lesser jail time after being in prison by giving information. And the information that was indicated was that Donald Trump had information about Jeffrey Epstein, and he was willing to share that. So that was something that someone from my Substack, one of my followers, handed to me and said, I want to remain anonymous, but would you send this off to the right person? I sent it off to someone else. They sent it off to someone else. And then it became big news in about 24 hours. But for me, kind of on a passion level, a lot of what I look for and what I think is important are things that are receipts for things that the survivors have said. In order for them to receive justice, they need receipts. And so you have someone like Virginia Giuffre, who passed away almost a year ago. And in her book, she swore up and down that there were things in Epstein's house that existed, like a surveillance room where he could keep track of the entire house from a single room filled with screens. This was something that they denied. Well, now in the files, we have pictures of the actual surveillance room. So there's just a lot of things in these files that you say, okay, I can see it in front of me. I have physical evidence. Virginia was telling the truth, and we can move forward with this case.
The Trump administration has not made this easy for you. Congress set a deadline for the Justice Department to release those Epstein files in full. We're now more than a month past that deadline. We've seen roughly 1% of the files. But beyond all the procedural delays, the redactions, in what other ways are you seeing this material being hidden from public view?
I think they're just making it complicated to access. When they released, like, let's say on December 23rd, they released something called Batch 8, and that was about 30,000 pages. When they release something like that, they say, okay, the public can look at these documents. Here they are, but they will release them a single page at a time. So they're really hard to go through and actually look at, and then look at the next page, and then look at the next page. And so something that I've done in order to make it more accessible to people is combine all the pages into something like a PDF so that people can look and they can just scroll down. But they want to make these things really, really hard to read and access and get through in hopes that we give up or we don't understand. And so part of my platform is just to make things more accessible.
Now, this investigation you're conducting has also introduced a cooperative model of journalism. And I find it interesting that you tell the people who are working with you, don't start at the beginning of the file, start at the middle or start at the end.
Right.
So who are some of the people who are contributing to the work that you're doing? What kind of backgrounds do they come from? How does that collective effort function in practice?
It's really amazing. The level of, or the variety of skill that has landed in my inbox. I have paralegals, I have lawyers, I have doctors, I have psychoanalysts. I have people who are really good at digging through metadata and computer analyzing, just all skills that I don't have. And when you put all these things together, different people discover different things. I had a woman the other day who made a video on YouTube that showed how she could analyze font and the size of font and the spacing of font in order to unredact some of these highly redacted documents. Most of the redactions are not survivors. They're actually people involved on the legal side of things, or they're co-conspirators. And so that's really, really helpful for us to analyze these documents with these extra skills that I don't have.
Now, all these people who have joined your ranks, the ones working with you, how do you even know that they are what they say they are, that their expertise is in fact real? Are you able to fact check them and their output?
I wish I could. At this point, I have thousands and thousands of people helping me out. The thing that fact checks them is just what they're able to do. If somebody comes to me and says, I'm a psychoanalyst, that's great. I don't know if you're a psychoanalyst or not, but if you can comb through the files and give me some information on the files that has to do with psychoanalysis and it pans out, then that works enough for me. But I don't have the ability to fact check every single person that comes along.
All American journalists are familiar with the Trump administration repeatedly flooding the zone, overwhelming the news media, possibly to distract, possibly to deflect. In this case, are we kind of seeing the roles reversed, Ellie, with citizens turned investigators flooding a space that the Trump administration has tried to keep hidden?
I do think that independent journalism is flooding the zone, and something that we're starting to see over the last probably 2-3 months is that the Trump base is shrinking. People are getting very tired. They're getting a little bit uncomfortable. Things that they thought were outside of their realm of possibility are kind of inching closer. And so we're starting to see that base shrink. And in the meantime, we're seeing this independent journalism world grow. I really stepped into it kind of toward the beginning. I was just a fan. I was a follower. I followed people like Jim Acosta and others who had left network television. And I've really looked up to them and learned from them in this process. And so to be here and watch this team grow and start to work together and feel kind of like a tight-knit family as we all fight this system, it's felt like we've gotten a lot of our power back. And it's a really incredible thing to see.
Ellie Leonard, recent convert to the world of journalism. Much respect for what you do, and thank you for speaking with us here at the Listening Post today.
Thank you, Richard.